Coming to you from sunny Orlando, Florida, welcome to the Paperstac podcast, where we cover current topics in the note industry, give you tactics for your note business, and talk with industry leaders to make you a better note investor. And now, your hosts, Brett Burky and Rick Allen.
Welcome back to another episode of the Paperstac podcast. I'm Rick Allen, Brett Burky, and today we've got another installment of our new series, Win, Lose, and Learn, where we're going to talk about either wins, losses, and what we've learned from it. And today we're pretty excited. We've got somebody who's going to share not one, not two, but potentially 3 different deals they've done and share them with us. Chad Urbshott, welcome to the show, man.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Nice to see your faces. Be nice to see.
Yes.
Nice to see you in person again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Are you going to Note Expo?
No, I'm not going to that one, but hopefully next year when things are opening up, we'll.
Yeah, definitely.
So would be nice.
Why don't you share a little bit about yourself? Tell us, the people who don't know you, who are listeners, who you are, what you're doing, and then we can jump into the deals.
Okay, well, I'll try to do the Coles notes because sometimes I get a little bit carried away. So I started investing in real estate back in about 2007, and then 2012, 13-ish, started buying foreclosures down in South Florida. And long story short, it was a year or two into that, and the hedge funds kept moving. Well, you guys know this here in Florida as well. The hedge funds moved in and started buying everything in sight just to turn them into rentals and paying like retail prices for foreclosures, which I thought was completely asinine. But at the time, one of my partners at the time, I was doing some rentals on some other things up in Cleveland. And he said, well, why don't you buy the notes from the bank before they get to the foreclosure? And I'm like, at that time, I had no idea you could even do such a thing. I was like, what? I was when an epiphany, a light bulb went off. So yeah, like it was 2015, like I mentioned, and kind of did some research into it. Ended up partnering up with another person, kind of as a passive, put the capital towards the deal. Try to learn through osmosis on how the process went. And I'll just say that I figured, well, if this guy can do it, then I can do it. So it was like 2017. I completely stopped doing everything else real estate related and just jumped into notes on a real estate basis full time in 2017. And here we are today, 4 years later. And so predominantly just buy non-performing notes. We'll buy the odd sub-performing, but predominantly non-performing notes with the intent of either getting them reperforming again or taking the property back, which is usually about 50% of the time. And get a lot of surprises along the way when you bring back properties. So, yeah. So.
Are you still down? Are you in Florida right now?
No, I'm up in Canada. No,
okay.
So they opened the borders up again about a month ago, I think it was. But they make you jump through hoops in order to go down and come back. It's still not even worth it. So like all the testing you have to do, and you don't have to quarantine if you're vaccinated, but they still make you do I think it's a $200 test and quarantine for a couple of days until you get the results back. So it's
wow,
still pretty onerous. Yeah.
Wow, where in Canada are you?
I'm in the Toronto area, so directly north of you guys, about 2-hour flight.
Yeah. Is that the same time zone? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
cool. Yeah. So
yeah, tell us about you have the triple whammy here that we want to hear about.
Yeah. So when you sent me the email, I'm like, oh man, there's so many examples I could pick from, from a loss standpoint and a win standpoint, and some of the lessons learned. But I'll go through them really quick because I don't want to, because I know this is a fairly limited time we've got here. But I'll start with the very first one. So, the thing I love about real estate is you generally don't lose money. And that was always my mindset until I got into notes. And when you get into notes, you can actually lose 100% of your money and then some. So the very first deal, this happened probably 2 years ago. This particular note was part of a pool, and a pool of like 70 some odd notes, I think it was. So it was a fair number of a fair bit of due diligence had to be done. So we ordered the title reports, as you normally do during the due diligence period. And quite a few of them came back with unpaid taxes. So this one particular deal, it just said it was delinquent taxes. So once the deal closed, I was actually going through all the ones that had delinquent taxes and actually calling the counties and because sometimes the title reports don't have the actual payoff amount. So it's always a good idea just to, get the verbal, what the actual payoff amount is, so you can send a check in or pay it online, where the case may be. So this one was I'm pretty sure it was in Indianapolis. And so I call up and they said, sorry, there's no redemption period left on this. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no redemption period? Yeah, so the title report showed that the taxes were delinquent, but didn't show it was in a tax sale. Yeah, so it had already gone to a tax deed sale and completely lost the property. There's nothing they could do about it at that point. So that was a little frustrating.
Did you go after the borrower at all?
The borrower? No.
You just took your losses and moved on.
Yeah, it was like a lower value property. I think we paid about, I should have checked the numbers on them. I think we paid $12,000 for it, and it was probably worth 35, 40, kind of around that time frame, or in that range of values. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the borrower is deceased on top of it all. So
just lesson learned, right?
Yeah, exactly. So ended up going back to the title report vendor, and out of the 70 some odd reports that we did, they refunded us the money. I mean, it didn't cover the loss that we took, but at least it covered some of it. So yeah. And as I was saying before we got on the show, I don't want to make this sound like it's all doom and gloom when you're in the notes, but this is some of the things you need to look out for. So on the flip side of that, in the same pool, now this is just one example, kind of a similar situation. It was actually vacant land in central Okeechobee, I think, Central Florida. It had a couple to $2,000-3,000 worth of unpaid taxes, but it was a tax lien, but it wasn't headed for tax deed sale yet. So I paid like $1 for that one because it was only worth like $10,000, $9 or $10,000. So, like a loan level bid, like, it's worth nothing. Here's $1 for this one kind of thing. Well, fast forward 6 months or 12 months, I can't remember what it was. For some reason, the borrower paid off the taxes. I think once she started getting notifications from us that, showed money on the property, and it was worth, like, the unpaid balance was like in the 30s on that, because that was back in the day. It was purchased back in the mid 2000s, where people were paying stupid prices for land in the middle of nowhere in Florida that weren't going to be developed for 100 years. So we ended up, she paid the taxes, and then she didn't want anything to do with the property, and she deed and looted it to us. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're all in maybe $1,000 with some bit of legal fees and servicing fees, and then turn around and sold it for $9,000. So
wow.
Yeah, so that's, I guess you could chalk that up a win to kind of offset the loss of the tax sale. So,
and so was that in the same pool?
Yeah, that one was in the same pool.
So yeah, it's kind of important, I think, that people kind of realize that as you get in and you're doing more than one asset at a time, and you start aggregating them into pools, you're going to take some on the chin. And if you can look at, it's just the way it is, right? And if you can look at that trade as a whole and say, okay, over the average out of this, you're going to win. You should be winning. And it's just sometimes you're going to take them on the chin, and then other times you're going to get one for, a buck and be able to do it for $1,000 and sell it for $9,000.
Yeah. So, and there's a couple more like that, like maybe not quite as good of a, like I think one, we got a payoff right off the bat, and it was $4,000 or something like that. Like, it was with a couple months in. It was like the title company actually sold the property, and they didn't get a payoff from the bank that we bought it from. And so the lien was still outstanding. So when I called up the title company, I'm like, hey, what happened here? How come you issued this deed? And they're like, oh my God, how much? They said, we reached out to the bank. We never heard back. We just assumed that there was no lien left or whatever. But we had full proof that it was still valid, and we had all the assignments. So they ended up just paying. It was only, like I said, it was only $4,000 or $5,000, $4,500 or something like that. So that was another example where we paid $1 for. And I think the reason we paid $1 for it was because it had changed hands, and I saw that it was an actual warranty deed on the title report. I'm like, well, this thing's obviously worth nothing. It's probably unsecured, but it wasn't. It was just that the title company screwed up on that one. So when they did the exchange, or when they did the sale of it, so I'll go to number 2. So this one is, so that was 100% loss in the first one I mentioned. Obviously, every single dollar is gone on it. This one is probably about a 50% loss. So not as big, obviously, but from a dollar perspective, it's probably the biggest loss probably taken to date. So this loan, it was a long drawn out deed in lieu. I won't get into all the specifics of it, but it took about 12 months. Finally got the deed in lieu. It was through a power of attorney. The guy ended up, he was in jail. His brother signed the deed in lieu. And I thought, oh, great, fantastic. So when I did got all the details back in the due diligence, the BPO showed it was worth something like 85,000, somewhere around there, 85,000. And the property right next door to it sold like 6 months prior to, and I think it sold for like 95, but it was like pretty fixed up on the inside. Well, this one looked pretty decrepit, bunch of long grass, and it was out in the country too, so long grass growing around it. So it looked like it was vacant, and I thought, okay, well, I'll take that 85,000 and I'll reduce it down to like, I think it was 60. So I can't remember what the unpaid balance was. It was somewhere around there in that neighborhood as well. So I based the price based on the discounted BPO, and I think paid about 32 for it. So 32, divided by 60, around 50%. Well, get the deed in lieu, get the preservation company in to secure it, and the place, so the front looked okay, but the back, there was like a wall missing. The ceilings were collapsing. The roof was collapsing in on the back. You couldn't see that from the front. Like water in a basement, like 6 feet of water in a basement. Like so it needed to be demoed. It's literally like worthless. But the only saving grace of this one was it's on 6 acres of land, wooded land. So it was in the country. So, had some intrinsic value in the land at least. The deal was supposed to close today. There were some screw ups with the paperwork going back and forth, but anyways, hopefully it's going to close on it this week. But I sold it for $26,500. So after closing costs, everything going to be like low 20s, 22, and some change. So the expenses on that were about $7,000. So all in about 39, and taking, we're going to recover 22. So almost 50% loss on that. And that's, like I said, it's probably the biggest dollar wise. But lesson learned on that is when I send out preservation companies, if it's vacant, I'll say, listen to them. This looks like it's vacant, even though you're not really supposed to do this, but can you walk around the property, at least take some some shots around the back? Some will do it, some won't. It just depends on.
If it's been abandoned, I think you have a right to secure.
Well, if you don't own the note yet, you're not.
Really if you don't own the note, yeah.
Yeah, you're not even supposed to trespass, right? But it's kind of a great area. So oftentimes I'll say, listen, if it looks abandoned or if it's vacant, can you at least walk around, take some shots of the back? So it's kind of a lesson learned on that one. Like if I'd have known in this one, obviously there was a hole in the bloody back wall, and the windows were popped out, and the roof was caving in. I probably would have put a $30,000 value on it, right? But I ended up, like I said, selling it for 26. So, but like I said, that's just a lesson learned. And but on the flip side of that, just sold a couple of reperforming loans last week, 2-3 weeks ago now, and the returns on them are like well over 100%. So on both of them, so. Like I said before, right? It all kind of balances out. As long as you have more wins than losses, or at least hopefully your wins are making more than make up for your losses, then
yeah. I think you also wind up with like some unexpected wins. Like you may I know when I bought some pools, like you said, they'll throw something in there. You're like, yeah, I'll give you $1 for it, and you end up just making a win there. You're probably not planning on making a huge win there. You're just like, this is going to be a bit of a headache, but it all kind of works out. Did you sell those loans on Paperstac, I hope?
No, these ones actually, I put them out in a pool with a bunch of others. It was like kind of an institutional trade, so I think that's why I've got such a stellar return on them. But I was going to put them on Paperstac if they didn't sell, and so sorry about that, guys.
No worries, man. I'm just joking around.
Yeah. So it. They came back like way more than I was expecting, but they're reperforming loans. They've been paying for like well over a couple of years now, I guess. And
so they're paying the reperforming stuff is pretty good.
Yeah, we ended up getting like high 80s on those, I think it was, and I was expecting like high 70s to low 80s. So because they've been reperforming a couple times. Like one of them had a loan mod like 2-3 times, 3 or 4, I think. And the other one was like the second loan mod. And, those things, they're bound to go non-performing again, So I was kind of surprised at the price that came in on those. But the good thing is there's a ton of equity above them, right? And, if they have to foreclose, they'd obviously get the property back or maybe not get the property back, but they would recoup their money at least. So
that's the thing, like buying, like actually putting down $1 for loans. Really?
Sure.
Yeah, it's part of a pool. Like some sellers will want to see loan level bids, and in this particular case, it was a loan level bid, and there was quite a few that we hadn't wanted. Well, I shouldn't say that. Like we bid originally, and then after we got the due diligence back, there's some we went back and got a what do you call it? Like a resale, not a resale, but like a buyback or whatever. What's the terminology when they like buy the loans back from you?
Yeah, just a buyback would.
Yeah, so we invoked that
Purchase.
clause. Yeah, repurchase. But some of them they just said, these things are junk, just keep them. So we reduced the bid down to $1. So
Yeah, that's it happens just because them, if you look at it, they're buying stuff and they're like, this doesn't fit our buy box, and we got them. So I look at it and I'm like, well, there's $3,000 in past due taxes. That's a $3,000 bill I'm gonna have to pay. If I can get $1 for it and let somebody else handle it, I just made $3,000.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened that lot in Florida. Like I never expected the borrower to come back and pay those taxes, and that's why I only bid $1. Like if there was no taxes going on it, I might pay $1,000 or $2,000 for it. If you foreclose, you're into it for 5 or 6, and you take it, and you have a piece of land that you're into it for say 6-7 grand. You turn around and sell or finance on a land contract for 15, right? So that's kind of that's kind of the got to think of different exit strategies. So yeah, so I have a third. I don't know if you want to give me that or if we have enough time.
No, yeah, go ahead, man.
Okay, this one's kind of note related, not entirely, but it started out as a note. Actually, it was a non-performing CFD. Same thing. It came out in a pool of about 8, I think I bought. This was 3-4 years ago. I think the BPO was like 60 on it. So that was back in the day when I used to get BPOs. It didn't take me long to learn that you never, ever trust these bloody things because they're never, ever. But I think that one I even discounted it to like 40. So this one had the borrower had just vacated it when we took it over, and they ended up signing a cancellation of land contract. So it was pretty swift and easy. When we got the property, though, it was just a total disaster. Like it took like, one of those ones where it took like 3-4 dumpsters to clean out. And so my intention was so then, I'm doing the comps on it. I'm like, oh, this thing's worth like 10 grand maximum. Like it was in an area of St. Louis, kind of like a suburb of St. Louis. So as you're probably aware, St. Louis isn't really known for its high-end property, especially in the lower end areas. So I thought, well, I'll throw a bit of money into it and I'll do a seller finance on it again. So time I got it all cleaned out, I decided I was going to manage the contractors myself, like kind of like just buy a bunch or hire a bunch of subs. Well, that was a total mistake right from day one. Should have hired a general contractor. Anyways, I got ripped off 3 ways a Sunday by about 4 or 5 contractors going through that place. They say they're going to do work and they take pictures, even videos, but then, they don't do it of the entire house. And you find out like some of the stuff that was supposedly done, they didn't do. It frozen through the wintertime, so we had to redo all the plumbing in it. The person that was in there before, they tried to do all their electrical. We had to redo all the electrical in it. It needed a new furnace, like you name it. It needed everything. So my $20,000 budget turned into ended up being like 50, I think it was, time we're all said and done. Might have been even close to 60. So I thought, well, I'm not going to sell or finance this. I'm just going to sell it as a retail rehab property. So before I did all that, though, I'm not kidding you, I had 4 realtors within within a few months go through it. And I, asked them what their opinion of what this thing could sell for. 3 of them out of 4 said it would sell between 90 and 100 grand all day long, like if it was fixed up. And one came through, but she was from like a different area of like the other side of St. Louis. And she said 50. I'd used her on another project, and she said 50. But I thought, well, she doesn't really know the area, so I'm going to go with these other three's opinion. So after getting ripped off and putting 50, 60 grand into this place, I think, oh, by the way, I think I paid about 15 for it to begin with. So I'm into it for, like, at this point, 75 grand. So I thought, okay, if I sell it for 90, I'll make a few bucks. Listed it for sale. It had tons of showings, but just no one was biting on it. No one was biting. I don't think I had any offers. Well, then the flooring started peeling up in it, like bubbling up, because the flooring guy ripped me off. He did it improperly. Had to redo the flooring. It was just like one nightmare after another. And then the ceilings. Oh, and then sprung a leak upstairs in one of the bathrooms. It came down through the ceiling. Like, it was just like, the nightmare from Elm Street, basically, without Freddy Krueger in it. But in any event, long story short, so we ended up taking off the market. I had to put a bunch more money into it to get this thing up and running again. And then I found out it was like a really beautiful lot, though. It was like up on, like, it was kind of like it was in a suburban area, but it was up on, like, this big hill. I can't remember what it's called now, but it overlooked the St. Louis. You could see the arch from it, from the back deck. Like, it was a really, really nice lot, but apparently it was in like it was within a block of, like, the roughest neighborhood of St. Louis, although it was, like, far enough removed. So I think that scared a lot of people away as well. End of the day, I think I sold it for, like, high 50s.
Oh,
yeah. So, man, it was, that injury, injury to insult to injury. It was just like, yeah. So it took a good $40,000 hit on that one. So that was lesson learned. Like, never ever am I going to sub out a project or, like, do it all myself. Hire a general contractor. Yeah, there's so many lesson learned on that one. Like, I can't even begin to.
You could write a book just on that one.
Oh yeah, and that was like a 2.5 year ordeal too, over that, like, time frame. Like, it was like, yeah. So, but the problem was I kept putting it on the back burner too. It was just like one of those problems I just didn't want to deal with. I'd do a bunch of stuff with it, and then it was like, oh my god, another problem. And then, I put it on the back burner. Any events, yeah. So lesson learned, tons on there. Is just, yeah, don't. I'll never do a rehab again in St. Louis.
No, I've had those same situations, and I went through something similar to that, and I learned my lesson, and I'm like, I always look at it, if I've got one that's on the borderline, I'm like, if I crack open a wall, I know what's going to happen. There's just more and more stuff. So do I want to take a $5,000 loss today, or do I want to take a 25 grand loss in a year and a half after everything's gone wrong? I was like, I'll take my $5,000 loss today and just get out and move it down, because it's just the headaches, even if it's a, break even, you're like, I could get that money and make $5,000 off that money. Let's move it.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. So yeah, that is my biggest lesson learned. Like, I've had many others since then. Like, you get a property back from foreclosure and it's a total disaster. And it's like, nope, not rehabbing this one. Just sell it as is, even if we take a small loss on it or break even. You're right. So
it's so tough, right? It's tough to manage it's really hard to manage a rehab from another state.
Oh, so I used to do rehabs in Florida, and I had, like, one contractor who I used for years and years and years, where I wouldn't even see the property. I'd just say, hey, Robbie, can you go and check this property out? I'd sometimes go with him. Not half the time I would, maybe. And then the realtor that I used at the time, he would go with him. So they do a video walkthrough, and he would just give me a verbal what the price was going to be. And then he'd, the next day he'd write up, like, if we got usually a day or two later, it's pretty quick trying to buy investment properties. Like, they're pretty, like, no wasting any time down there. So within a couple of days, if we got the offer accepted, he would send me a contract or a quote, and it was like within, like, a couple grand of what he thought what it was going to take just from his walkthrough. And he never, like, the odd time he would say, oh man, this is something I did not see coming. It very rarely happened. Sometimes he would eat stuff, and he always did the jobs. And it was like, I don't know, I guess kind of like my only experience, really. So I thought, oh, rehabbing is easy, but
it's different though. Like,
contractor is.
When you have boots on the ground, A, and B, you're getting to see the disaster you're buying before you buy it.
Yeah.
The problem, I think, sometimes with notes is you don't get to see the disaster you're buying. I mean, heck, you had a house that looked, it looked a little rough on the front, but on the back there was holes in the wall, and the roof was caving in. So there's some of those things where that's why like it is, I find it where if I can avoid, especially if it's an area, now there's a couple areas that I've got a solid contractor where we focus on those areas. We're buying notes in those areas. We've got a team together, right?
Yeah.
I'm more likely to do a rehab there, and I kind of focus on buying higher end properties there or higher end notes because there's more room to absorb the blow if disaster strike.
Right. Yeah. So if I like stuff in Cleveland, Columbus, I've done tons of stuff there now. Yeah, I'm not afraid to buy anything in those, just because, like I said, you've got boots on the ground, right? So
you got boots on the ground. Just as long as like I find it in Cleveland, there's a few little like municipalities they'll get you on the nickel and diming stuff, but other than that, I think those two places are good. So, hey, Chad, we ran a little bit over, but it was good, man. You definitely filled up the plate with some knowledge there. We really appreciate you stopping in.
Good lessons.
Yeah, I know, but I could see. Right. You can always tell when Brett's sitting here, he's just soaking it all up. He's like looking.
I'm just watching. I'm just learning. I'm like, oh, that's good to know. That's good to know. And I'm sure that's the thing is like other people are watching. That a lot of people that are watching probably are new, and so these things are great. What's your lessons?
Right. Yeah. Well, that one to offset that loss. I had the same pool, CFD pool, took back another total piece of junk in Flint, Michigan. I'll make it really short. Had it under contract to sell so I think I paid $6,000 for it. Had it under contract to sell for 25-ish, I think. And then and it was right before Christmas. The realtor sends me an email, fire in garage or something. I'm like, what? Senate Preservation Company. It wasn't just a fire in the garage. The entire thing was engulfed. Like it was a total write-off. Took about a year, but I got the insurance check for $65,000 on it. So I was like, well, I guess that offset the loss I took on that bloody rehab, right? So like I said, it all balances out in the end, or hopefully it all balances out in the end.
It and works out like that. It always like it, and it's you're never counting on that, but it just happens. Like it just happens to where, hey, something happened. We've had that happen. A tree fell on an NPL, and the people are like, well, it's like you're so far behind. We're gonna have to. We had to take all the insurance money.
Yeah. So. I've had that happen too. Yeah, I had that happen just this year as well. So, and their insurance money covered their debt. So it's like, well, sorry, you didn't get to fix your house up, but you didn't pay your mortgage. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, you get the house free and clear now. We're gone. We'll sign it over to you. Is what we did. You get it free and clear. So if you can fix it for cheap, you get the house for free.
Yeah,
that's not a bad deal.
Exactly. That's what we did. Yeah, we actually took a bit of a short payoff because it was a little old lady too. So
we did the same thing. You just do it, but hey, it's like what I got most of my money back, and it was a headache that I didn't have to deal with anymore. So we're out.
Yep.
And they get a house.
And they got the house for free, so it's win-win. So. Well, we're pushing 30. Hey, man, we really appreciate you joining us. We'll definitely have you back on. You've got good stories. I'm sure you've got more you can share with us. So we will. We appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
We'll see you at the next conference, wherever that may be.
I was just going to say, hopefully next time we see you guys in person versus over video. So, yeah.
Alrighty.
All right, guys.
Take care.
Take care. Have a good one. Okay, bye now.